Is there that little countdown thing, or do you just want me to?
I don't have that. I don't know how to do
Okay.
that.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go 3, 2, 1,
and we're live.
Yeah, the old fashioned.
3, 2. Well, you cut this part. I'm gonna go 3, 2, 1, and then we're gonna start. All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of Box to Box Football. I'm Kyle. We've got JJ, Stu, and Mike. Sean, unfortunately, is on the injured list, not fit enough to start tonight. We hope to get him back soon now. So if you want to find him, Prodigal Sean on Twitter, and tell him to feel better soon and wish him well. In the meantime, we'll hold it down here on Box to Box Football. Remember to follow us on all your socials, wherever you get your podcast from. Give us likes. Hit the bell. Do you do that? Do you hit the bell? Give us stars. You know how it is that the algorithm works now. But back for the week 2 recap of Premier League football. And then, of course, we've got a big around the world we want to get to as well. The Women's World Cup final, a Christian Pulisic banger for AC Milan, the Champions League playoffs, the final 6 spots for the group stage up for grabs this week. And then how about a thrilling Leagues Cup final here in the States with Messi winning a trophy with Inter Miami. So without further ado, gentlemen, let's get to it. Week 2 of the English Premier League season, and we're going to start at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where Ange Ball up and running, Spurs 2, Manchester United 0. Pape Sarr gets Spurs on the board in the 49th minute, and then an own goal from Lisandro Martinez. But Spurs looked really good in this game. United, not so much. Second straight year that Manchester United's got off to a slow start under Eric Ten Hag. They 1-0 win, scraped by against Wolves in the opener, and now we're outplayed by Spurs in this game. JJ, I'll turn it over to you. Your thoughts on this one?
Ooh, which means I get to start as the United fan, the sole United supporter in the room. Listen, so I'm a little bit more of a realist in terms of my my thoughts. I kind of try and look at these things as sort of a neutral perspective. And I want to call back to the thing that I said about Tottenham a couple of weeks ago in one of our preview shows. Winning mentality breeds confidence, and what Ange Ball has brought to this Tottenham team is confidence and flair. I mean, when was the last time we actually saw a Tottenham team enjoy their football? It's certainly not at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium of current, maybe perhaps at a chewed up Wembley Stadium pitch, which still, by the way, I don't know how that grass survived after all those matches in the midst of those 2 years that they played there. But I mean, this team, they did exactly what you needed to do. We talked briefly in our last episode about expectations, that battle between Madison and Casemiro of the absolute, show artists, I think is a nice way to put it. But yeah, what they did is basically they just took out Casemiro in the sense of just trapped him in a corridor of, well, you can't really get out of it, made the field as wide as possible. I thought Kulusevski actually was quite decent. I know Sonny was Sonny, but Kulusevski really was one that was able to drag everybody out wide and make things easy. Sarr was class. Richarlison, I know it wasn't the match that maybe he would have wanted to have to get a bit more service going to him, but every time that Spurs drove in the attacking third, I thought they looked dangerous. I thought that they were going to at least create chances every time they went forward. And United, yeah, they had that little patch. Think about the 50th to 60th minute where they hit the post once with Anthony on the crossbar. FC came in a couple of times as well. But you can't just wait for a team to score to get yourself going. And that was something that United suffered a little bit over previous managers. Yes, they did have their couple of lapses last season. But for me, there weren't any standout performers in that team. I mean, you could say that Anthony had some moments. Great. Bruno, there's a lot of things a lot of people could say about him. I know the whining is something that's really come to the forefront. Were there shouts of penalties? Yes, but there were shouts of penalties on both sides. And guess what, Bruno? You got away with the one the week before with Onana absolutely clattering a Wolves player. So sometimes the house wins. I think it was a fair result. Spurs probably could even won by 3 or 4, and United have to go back to the drawing board.
Onana clattered him so bad they went out and basically told the referees, "You have to call that from now on. And we actually saw that in the Everton game where Pickford got called for a penalty. Mike, and I'll get to you here, but that's 4 goals from 2 games for Spurs under Ange Postecoglou. Wondering how they would look in the post-Harry Kane era when it came to scoring goals. But 2 goals in the opener against Brentford, 2 goals now against Manchester United. Just is this what you expected from Spurs?
Absolutely not. Creative, free-flowing, fun to watch. It hasn't been since Pochettino was the coach and Dele Alli was at the top of his game that we've seen Tottenham play like this, play with this kind of flair, this kind of fun. This was a really enjoyable game to watch as a neutral. And I kind of joked around last week that Man City would score 9 goals if they played that type of football against them. I still think I believe that, but Tottenham might score 8. I mean, it's going to be all over the pitch. But what I came away from this game seeing as something troubling is a lot of us, I think, in our preseasons thought United had steadied the ship a little bit and had kind of taken that step forward into the B tier. Not in the A tier yet, not in the championship contenders, but into that kind of B tier, comfortably a Champions League team. They are not. That hasn't happened. And this looked like the United that is nerve-wracking if you're a United fan, is unsettling, is unsure of itself. Stu, to me, it kind of looked almost like Mourinho era United in this game. Unsure of itself was the thing I came away with.
Absolutely. And they're probably lucky to have 3 points at this stage. It probably should be 1 point. The midfield just absolutely dominated. You kind of don't like that fit of Mason Mount with Casemiro. It's kind of leaving Casemiro out on an island. Rashford's playing out of position. Bruno's playing out of position. Like, they have him on the right a lot of times, Rashford up the middle. It's just, and those are your 2 best goal scoring threats, your 2 best offensive performers, and you're kind of putting them in positions where they're not set up to succeed the most that they should. As for the Spurs, I mean, I'm so impressed by them. The midfield play, Basuma was great. Pepe Sarr was great. They really did a good job with their movement, especially in the second half, I would say, countering the pressure. I feel like United played okay in the first half. They had a lot of chances, but then in the second half, is that right?
Oh,
do we have someone else coming to the party?
You knew that we were not going to have this Manchester United discussion without the man that brings his opinions to the table. So
he has arrived late. He's arrived late into the box, unlike Bruno Fernandes, to hopefully take us home here for the final point on Manchester United Spurs.
Yeah, they just look. I thought that the first half was pretty even. I think the first goal was always going to be big. I actually didn't think we played that poorly in the first half, but it's tough playing at Tottenham. They're a decent team. They're going to be pressing. Manchester United just doesn't have anybody that can score goals right now. They need Rasmus Højlund to be healthy, like now. They really, really need him to play this weekend. But they need to figure out what's going on here. They need a couple more players in, like ASAP. So I think this Harry Maguire thing tanked the whole. When he doesn't want to go because he doesn't want to take the money, all of a sudden now you can't bring another player, and then you can't bring a midfielder in. So, but it's just they're like 2 or 3 players short.
I will say this though, as we and I think a lot of people do overreact to 2 weeks into the season. Manchester United lost its first 2 games last year. It still ended up in the Champions League place. Now, that being said, I will say you cannot win the title in August, but you can lose it with a bad start. Look, Manchester United was not going to keep pace with Man City last year anyway. Man City, the best team in the league, and it certainly. But I wouldn't be over panicked right now. They got off to a slow start last year and then kind of picked it up and got hot.
Yeah. I'm just I don't know. I mean, I think we're probably going to talk about it later, but the officiating from game to game. I mean, we saw something again today. I mean,
it was bad this week. It was bad this week.
It's just it's. I know it's part of the entertainment, and that's why everybody talks about the league. I mean, when it's kind of the same with the NFL. They're always talking about controversy, and the Premier League is always controversy. But I mean, you can't have 15 cards a game. You can't have 15 minutes of extra time, added time on every and you can't. The referees have to have some kind of thing where it's there has to be some kind of consensus here, and there never is. It's crazy. The games from game to game, what's a penalty, what isn't?
Well, we are going to move to the other Manchester City club now, and that of course is the blue half, where Man City won, Newcastle 0 at the Etihad. We talked in the preview show about this being a chance maybe for Newcastle. Man City banged up with injuries. Kevin De Bruyne is out. Who was going to come in there and be able to not replicate what Kevin De Bruyne does, but give some creativity to that City midfield? And could this be an opportunity for Newcastle after a 5-1 win over Aston Villa in the opener to really put down a marker? Well, Man City does what it does. They throttled Newcastle, really limited the chances the visitors were able to take. Julian Alvarez took his chance in the 31st minute. I thought Phil Foden was really good in this game for City. If you're gonna talk about a guy who needs to step up for them, certainly Foden is a guy who can do that. I thought he gave them a creative spark, and it was kind of just like business as usual. And it's 2 wins from 2 for City. JJ, your thoughts and whether you thought Newcastle, you're on Newcastle's performance, and then Man City really just doing what it does.
Yeah, so unfortunately I was working, so I didn't have a chance to watch this match live, but I did talk to a couple of friends who are actually Newcastle supporters, and they actually came away from this match a bit more optimistic than I thought they would be. And the reasoning for that is this. You look at the XG for City, it was about 1. Yeah, they did have an advantage in shots, but outside of a couple of looks, it wasn't really anything that was going to be threatening towards Pope. And I go back to something that I said last week in the preview. If this match was at St. James's Park, could it be a little bit of a different issue where if the boys, that being the Newcastle players, needed a little bit of a lift in the 70th minute or so, could that be something with 50,000 Geordies in the stands trying to get behind them? Could that have been a difference maker to maybe push them on to get something? Because Kyle, as you rightly said, really not much for them going forward. I think their XG was about 0.3, give or take, depending on who you actually look for that. But I think for them, you take more from this, knowing that, okay, tactically, if you change just a couple of things, you are a little bit more prolific on the break. Maybe the next time these two teams play could be a little bit of a different story. Will that mean anything in the table? Probably not. But for the confidence, yeah, I think that means a lot.
I have a quick point here about City. City's always scored goals. Everybody, they scored 1 million goals last year, 151 goals, I think, in all the competitions. The reason City won the treble last year is because they had 27 clean sheets. Their defense won them the treble last year in that game against Inter Milan. Obviously, their defense shut everybody down. Inter had chances, but they didn't bend. They didn't break. They didn't give up a goal. The reason that Manchester City is as good as they are now is because in these big games, they just defensively play well, and they just didn't allow Newcastle to do anything. And that's the difference, I think, when it comes down to it at the end of the season. If City wins titles again, it's going to be because their defense is so strong.
What a great point, Sean. I think Pep has that reputation of Barcelona and Messi and free-flowing football and 1 million passes and everything that he does. And he does have that reputation because they're really good at that too. We haven't seen that as much, but I don't think this City team gets nearly the credit it deserves for how stifling they can be defensively. Rodri scored the Champions League winner, but man, he is probably the best holding midfielder in the world. And that defense that we wondered, are players out of position? How did it look in the final against Sevilla in the Super Cup? Boy, they looked as tidy as ever on Saturday afternoon, Stu.
Yeah, they did, and it's just sometimes they play the 4 center backs, sometimes they play the 3 center backs. It just depends on the different system they play. And really, to me, watching this match, obviously Foden was a standout offensively, creating chances. He looked really good in that role, playing kind of behind Haaland and Alvarez with Walker, running down that right flank. And then the defense, like you said, Mike, it's just absolutely stifling. You have a Kanji kind of playing in that Stones role, kind of pressing up into the midfield. I mean, the home form too. 17 straight wins in all competitions, 55 goals, 7 goals conceded, and 11 clean sheets during that period. It's just, you have to imagine, Kyle, this run it's going to continue. Whoever challenges them, whether it's Arsenal, maybe it's Newcastle, I don't know who it's going to be, but it's a tall order because this team is just so good, so well managed, so many good players. And now they're bringing in another guy, Doku, who is just another guy to add to the team. They'll probably add a midfielder at some point. You miss a guy like De Bruyne, but at the same time, this team is so talented and so coached so well that it's hard to doubt them. It just is.
I'm still concerned. I'm still concerned about the loss of De Bruyne long term. But Pep made no subs in that game. Did you see the video of him? He was kind of going at it with the fan who was giving him stick because he didn't want to make any substitutions. And he said, "Okay, you want to come down here and do it?" I would have been like, "Yeah, let me get on it. I can manage this team. I mean, it's Manchester City. Just roll the ball out, man."
I think too. Just quickly. I mean, when you look at the back four, City's obviously going back to the defense. Kyle Walker, who's still at his age pacey,
still doing it, man, still doing it.
Kanji, Ruben Diaz, who was the Player of the Year 2 years ago in the league. Vardiol, who's going to be a monster. That's their back four, and then you just kind of look at Newcastle's. I know Kieran Trippier is pretty good, but Fabian Schär, Sven Botman, and Dan Burn. Over the course of the season. I just think City's, that back four is going to probably get them more points, and Newcastle is going to drop some points. Maybe they shouldn't in games, or, maybe draw some games like they did last year, just because that back four is not at the same level as City's.
We're going to move on to the other title contender, at least what most people consider, and that's Arsenal. And that game we're taping on a Monday, so that game was earlier this afternoon. Arsenal won, Crystal Palace 0. Martin Odegaard from the spot in the 53rd minute, and then Arsenal hangs on for the last 23 minutes plus stoppage time with 10 men after Tomiyasu is sent off for a second yellow card. Again, we talked about the refereeing earlier, and if you want to talk about bad refereeing, Tomiyasu ends up having to eat a yellow card for a delay of game after his teammate holds the ball and then throws it to him. And he's like the guy got caught holding the hot potato. He gets a yellow for that. And then a couple minutes later, he gets a ridiculous yellow card for something that personally was, not only was it not a yellow card, it wasn't even a foul. But you can't go back and look at it because it's not an offense where the referee gives a straight red card. He calls a foul, gives the second yellow, but you can't review that for VAR. So he ends up getting sent off. Give Arsenal credit, going down to 10 men. Palace was pouring on the pressure for the last 25 minutes or so. But even so, I don't think Ramsdale had to make one save in that last 25 minutes. Palace had the one very late chance that blazed over the crossbar. But Arsenal able to batten down the hatches. I haven't thought the Gunners have looked great in their 2 games. I thought they didn't finish off Forest when they had a chance. And then obviously today, going down to 10, holding on a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's 2 wins from 2. And they've got 6 points, so they're still up there right at the top. You guys, I'll turn it over to you. Your impressions of this match today.
My biggest impression coming away from this game is that if you want to doubt Arsenal, they're giving you all the ammo that you need. I said last week that this is the kind of game that they find a way to maybe lose. They didn't do that, so credit for that. They found a way to get the result. They kind of robbed a bank. That was a foul on Partey. As they got fouled in the box, he should have been on the spot. It should have been a PK. The red card, though, on the other end was just, I mean, Kyle, like you said, preposterous isn't preposterous enough. It was a crazy the way that Tomiyasu got sent off in that game. I hate to come away from Monday Night Football for the second week in a row talking about the officiating. I mean, Sean, you mentioned it earlier. All right, fine. It's part of the entertainment. But when it's this bad, it's not part of the entertainment. It takes away from it.
Five red cards this weekend. And by the way, a ridiculous penalty in the Fulham game too. Don't get me started.
We'll get to that.
The problem is too. I mean, once again, I understand like this yellow card stuff's not going to go for the whole season. Obviously, they're trying to
send a message,
and
players will adjust. Is what the hope is.
It's so ridiculous. I mean, once again, every game is 5 yellow cards, 6 yellow cards. Crystal Palace, not Crystal, but the game during the week is 10 yellow cards during the, it's 10 yellow cards. It's crazy. These games, there shouldn't be 3 yellow cards in most of these games, let alone 10. And it's just, the officiating's just got to get better. But the problem is, I mean, over the years, I mean, you see these guys retire. Clattenburg retires early and Mike Dean's, obviously getting up in age and he's out. They don't replace him with people that are strong enough to do these games. And it's really, really bad. But I mean, officiating across the board, I'm basically, you could talk about that on any sport at this point.
Yeah, it's been absolutely horrible. And you would think, from an entertainment point as a neutral fan, it's not entertaining. It's just you want to see the best sport possible. You don't want to see the officials taking over. You want to see the players take over. And when the officials are taking over and guys are getting sent off and all these yellows and all this extra time, it's just, as a neutral fan especially, it's just not fun. And watching some of these games, that's what's really stood out to me.
Yeah. Not really much more for me to add on the referee side. I'll take the Palace side here for a second, guys, because I did say in our last episode again that this could be one of those, the potential, as Mike said, chance for Arsenal to lose, but I almost countered with this is a chance for Palace to take points and for them to be, picked out that team of the top 6 that's going to be the thorn in the side this year. And Eze was amazing once again, and he's proving why he could be now this new cornerstone really for this Palace team going forward. I mean, the amount of years at Wilf Zaha, yes, there were turbulent times, but he was a faithful servant to that organization for the better part of a decade and was able at times to pull them out of some tight matches. And at other points was the one that led the line. And I thought Eze showed a lot of signs today, especially when he was able to just go out, maybe drift just slightly and start to attack just one-on-one at defenders. He's got shifty feet. The second of the 2 penalties was Stonewall. This was the one, I think, 75th minute. It was where he split a couple of defenders. There was contact. Stonewall for me. We've already discussed the officials, but I think if he continues on this path that he's going, he probably is looking at least a 20 to 25 goal contribution season.
I know it's just a cameo. They brought on the kid too late. His name escapes me. The 20-year-old kid. He was on loan at Charlton last year.
Raksaki, I think is it.
Yes, yeah. They brought him on. Yeah, they brought him on late. And look, I know they were playing 11v10 at that point, but I thought he had a nice little cameo for him. Again, it's hard sometimes with young players in that situation because sometimes they'll pop for one game and then the rigors of the Premier League can kind of be tough to cope with at that age. But I thought they've got a nice young promising player there too, and I'll be interested to see how Hodgson uses him moving forward and how he integrates him into the side and whether there's more minutes available for him.
I wouldn't actually be stunned. There's a lot of rumors about him around Leicester because Crystal Palace wants him to get minutes. He was kind of still on the squad because they weren't sure if Elise was going to hang around or not. It looks like now they're going to be able to hold on to Eze and Elise. So I actually would be stunned to see him end up, if not at Leicester, with one of the big championship teams getting consistent minutes. He's a big-time prospect.
Well, let's stay in London. and dive into West Ham 3, Chelsea 1. A really nice result for David Moyes and the Hammers. Nayef Aguard had himself quite a day. He opened the scoring in the 7th minute and then got sent off in the 67th minute. Carney Chukwuemeka equalized for Chelsea in the 28th, and then a very nice goal from Mikel Antonio in the 53rd gave West Ham the lead back. And then Paquetá, who's been in the news for a multitude of reasons this week, with a penalty in the 5th minute of stoppage time to make up the 3-1 margin. West Ham having to defend with 10 after the 67th minute sending off. But again, 3 really nice points at home there for West Ham, and Chelsea still very much a work in progress under Pochettino, Sean.
Chelsea spent $1 billion and doesn't have a penalty taker and doesn't have anybody that can score a goal. Like, they spent $1 billion over the last, and we're not talking about like City's $1 billion spend over the last like 6 or 7 years. They spent $1 billion in the last 12 months. They don't have anybody that can take a penalty, and they don't have anybody that can score. That kid Jackson's going to be good, but like I just, at some point, I mean, you wonder if Chelsea's going to go maybe throw crazy money at Evan Ferguson from Brighton or Victor Osimhen. At this point now, you might as well spend for Osimhen. You spend all this extra money. I mean, they have a lot of really good players, but like, once again, like, where's Mudryk going to play? You know, he comes on for, 20 minutes. I mean, he's not going to start. I mean, they just bought all these other players. They have all these players that they just bought last year, and they're already replaced them with other players that they just brought in. So I was stunned that they played. Now, that being said, if he scores the penalty there, go up 2-1, I think it's a different game. But I'm just really stunned that with all these players they have and the players they've brought in, they just haven't gotten much better than they were last year. They're just not cohesive. I mean, that comes with the territory when you have all these players, but at some point you keep throwing money and keep throwing players. They have good players and they just aren't playing like it.
Cohesion comes with time, though. And I think the greatest mistake that Chelsea could make is not giving this side time. I think you see a massive difference. And I thought Graham Potter got an unfair result last year. I didn't think he should have been sacked. But you look at how Chelsea was coached and how they were playing last year, and you look at how Chelsea was playing on Saturday. They are a much better club. They are much more well-run. All right, they don't have someone who's that striker that can finish yet. Nicholas Jackson's pace creates opportunities that his feet don't quite know how to finish yet. But you look at this Chelsea side, they had the same lineup for both games. I don't know if they started the same lineup twice at all last year. Mauricio Pochettino has his guys. Caicedo was a catastrophe when he came on, Stu. I'm sure you loved that. But this Chelsea team, I would actually say now is the time for patience, not panic. Because that West Ham side has been together for a long time. They brought in James Ward-Prowse. He was playing, but other than James Ward-Prowse, everyone has been there under David Moyes for 100 years. That was a side with cohesion, a side that's used to playing with one another, playing against the side who was thrown together with $1 billion in the last 12 months. Chelsea needs time to gel. The talent is there.
Stu, has patience ever been a word you associate with Chelsea Football Club?
Oh, certainly not. And certainly not this year. I mean, this past year, like you guys have mentioned, $1 billion spent. And just watching this game. I mean, I don't know what Mudryk is. He's a guy who clearly has some talent. He has a lot of pace, but then he has a good chance in the box and basically punts the ball straight in the air. I don't know what the hell that was.
He was the bright, shiny object they had to buy because they thought Arsenal was going to.
Right, and there are a lot of clubs that were after him. The kid can obviously play, but he does not look good. Sterling was terrible against Liverpool. He actually might have been the best player for Chelsea a couple of days ago on Sunday. He was okay. Enzo, he's a great player. The penalty, he's probably not a penalty taker. They could probably do better in that regard. Again, if they get a striker that is proven and can make penalties and can put up 20 goals, then this is a team that probably be top 4, no question. But because you don't have that, and you have all the new pieces, I think they're going to very much struggle to get top 4. They're going to be near the top 4, but for Pochettino, it's going to be a big work in progress for Chelsea. I think it's going to take a while. JJ.
Well,
Yeah, Mike.
they're not going to be top 4 this year. They're not. This is a project, though. They have to decide, are they in on this project or not? Because if they dump this $1 billion and it's not working immediately and they start to bring in new players again and again and again, this will never work. They're going to become PSG. They're going to become the team that just cycles in expensive players and cycles out expensive players. And every time they leave this club, they get better and they go somewhere else and they're better than they are at Chelsea. And Todd Bowley's constantly chasing his tail, wondering why can't he ever be in the top 4. Chelsea has to decide, are they in on this project or are they not in on this project? And if they're not in on this project, they have spent $1 billion, JJ, about as poorly as you could spend it, unless you're named Elon Musk and running a social media website.
Whoa, we don't want to get canceled now, do we?
No, JJ, I also wanted to get your take on, do we feel better about West Ham now after 2 games?
I mean, it's a strange one because I was about to say, hey, we got the response that we were looking for out of West Ham after kind of a meh performance against Bournemouth in the opener. But at the same time, we've always gotten this from West Ham during this run that they've been in European football, where they'll challenge with the top teams every once in a while, and like they may string them together for a couple of good performances in a row. They'll show up when they need to. Obviously, they avoided relegation as well, so they have enough within them. But the fact that, yeah, they are a bit of an older team. They're a bit more of an experienced team. They've got a couple of wily veterans. I mean, Antonio, he's good for one of those about every 3 to 4 games where he'll just pop up down the wing. He'll chase down a ball over the top and absolutely rip one somewhere that even the best of the keepers are not going to stop him. I think I need to see more. I need to see if they're going to do more in the market personally. And also I need to see if they can be consistent. If they can be consistent, then top half is possible. A run in Europe is possible. If we can see this team that we saw on the weekend for 60% of the rest of the season, yeah, they'll be fine. There's going to be little worry in East London, but I need more right now.
This is just real quickly too on Chelsea. Look, here's their next 6 or 7 games. They play Luton at home, Forest at home, Bournemouth away, Villa at home, Fulham away, Burnley away. That's the international break, right? The second international break. If they get to that point and they're playing well, whatever. If they're not playing well, after the international break, they play Arsenal at home, Brentford, Spurs away, Manchester City, Newcastle, Brighton, and Manchester United in order. That's their 7 games after the break. So if they don't kind of put it together here over these next 6 games against these teams they should be beaten, and they go into that, that second international break and they come back and they have to play those teams. Now all of a sudden you're like, man, what's going to happen if that goes sideways? Because we saw it last year happen 2 different times, or really 3 different times under those managers.
Just want to run down some of the other results from the weekend, and then we'll kind of take reaction, anything that stood out to you guys from those games. We talk about a bounce back performance. Aston Villa 4, Everton 0. Everton looks really bad, looks in big trouble here. Aston Villa gets the bounce back after getting embarrassed by Newcastle in the opener. Brighton 4, Wolves 1, Matoma with a stunning run and a finish to open the scoring there. Sully March got 2 goals, and the Seagulls are flying high early on with a bunch of goals and 2 wins from 2. Brentford 3, Fulham 0. A ridiculous penalty, a gift. Fulham gave him a gift and then got a gift, and then Brentford got a gift from the referees, a ridiculous penalty, and they win the West London derby. Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 1. The Cherries actually took the lead in that game in the 3rd minute before Liverpool equalized through Luis Diaz. Mo Salah and Diego Jota were also on target. Alexis McAllister saw red for Liverpool. Also, Bournemouth wrapped up the signing of the American midfielder Tyler Adams this week on a 5-year deal. And then finally, the early game of the weekend, Nottingham Forest 2, Sheffield United 1. Iwoniz scores again for Forrest to give them the lead. Gustavo Hemmer equalized for Sheffield, and then Chris Wood comes on and does what Chris Wood does, a headed goal in the 88th minute to give the 3 points to Forrest. They got 37 points at home last year. That's how they stayed up. They look like they're at it again in terms of protecting the city ground there. I'll start with you, JJ. Just your thoughts from any of those games this weekend.
Yeah, I want to give flowers to Brighton because for the longest of times, they've been the butt of the joke about Team XG, Team XG. They can create all these chances, but they can't score. Our friends at NBC put together this lovely little graphic at the end of their broadcast today, which I think just proves a point of how good De Zerbi has been since he's taken over. Most goals in the Premier League since October 1st, 2022, which is when he took over. Man City first, 75 from 33 games. Arsenal 73 from 32 games. Brighton at third at 69. All right. They can score goals. Matoma is class. Brighton, please keep him. Let's see what you can do with this team. I know, unfortunately, they've been a team that's been picked clean over the last couple of years, but keep this squad together. You might have something special.
100% agree.
What I
Sean,
think...
Yeah, go ahead,
Sorry.
Stuart.
What I think Roberto De Zerbi has done, for me at least, has made Brighton a must-watch team pretty much every week, right? You have Man City's on, you're going to want to watch Man City. Arsenal, Liverpool, United, all those teams. But right below them is Brighton because they play with such a pace. They're fun to watch. They have players like Matoma, who's so fun to root for. Estupinian, an incredible player. Since the beginning of the year 2023, he has 7 assists. That is the second most out of any defender after Trent Alexander-Arnold, who has 9. They just play with such a fun pace. And even when they lose guys, they still seem to bring guys in that make them still such a good team. So what De Zerbi's done, even since Graham Potter, who I thought was a good manager, De Zerbi's even better. And it's creating Brighton into just such a fun team, Mike.
Well, JJ, you talked about wanting to give Brighton their flowers. I want to give Sean Miller his flowers because he said after that result on Monday that Wolves were probably going to lose 5-0, and he came damn close.
Yep.
They're the class of the middle of the pack, Brighton is. However, European football lingers. And if you play at this pace with the lack of depth that we perceive Brighton to have, Europe will hit like a brick, Sean.
Yeah, definitely. I think, they have to figure out a way to manage those Europa League games. Last year when they played in some of the FA Cup games, they played the backups in some of those games. So maybe they're going to do that to try to get through. Their backups should have enough to get through the Europa League, and maybe even even if they finish second, it's all right. But yeah, kind of after that Wolves result, I thought they were going to get destroyed there. And the other team, I mean, you talk about the other game that Kyle talked about first, Aston Villa, Everton. Sean Dyche got relegated and fired with a Burnley team that was better than this Everton team. And now you just lost Calvert-Lewin for probably, his whole face was swollen. He's probably got a concussion. He's going to be out for a little while. Iwobi, he couldn't even walk off the field. I mean, that's a hamstring. That's a long, lingering injury. And I don't know how much money they have to spend here. And
if you were a player, Sean, why would you want to join Everton right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're a player and you're Everton's trying, because Everton's trying to sign some players that maybe Nottingham Forest is, or maybe Palace, or maybe a Fulham or Bournemouth. Like, I would go to any of those teams over Everton. This Everton team, financial fair play, all this different stuff. They've had all this stuff hanging over them for years now, and they've just about escaped every single time. And at some point, you can't keep doing that. And they just don't have the money to spend. And if they're going to keep losing players to injuries, I think they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, the injuries mount for them.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Sorry, then I'll talk about Fulham.
If the injuries continue to mount for Everton, it's the disaster scenario that we talked about where maybe they have to consider replacing Sean Dyche, even though, God, who's going to come in and take that gig? I hear Dean Smith is available. Frank Lampard's available. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, this Everton situation looks bleak. I was joking around in our group chat that they should probably relegate 4 teams this year because, I mean, Wolves or Everton might stay up with less than 30 points this year.
That's the only way. That's the only way that these teams. I mean, and people talk about how good the league is at the top, but the bottom of this league is as bad as ever. I don't know that there's ever been a bottom 5 that is this bad. These teams, Everton, Wolves, Sheffield United, Luton, Burnley, I think is a little bit better than, but I don't know how much more. I think those teams all year are going to struggle to get to 30 points. Like it might be one of these teams stays up with 29 points, and that would be absolutely embarrassing. It's like making the playoffs at, the losing record. And one of these teams is going to step because they're just so bad. But who's the worst out of those? You just don't know. They're just all so terrible.
I was watching that made me feel a little bit better about Fulham after this weekend. And look, let me give some credit to Brentford because I thought Brentford was going to be in some trouble and take a step back with Ivan Toney out with the suspension, and then obviously losing David Raya to Arsenal. But Thomas Frank, gets the 2-2 draw against Spurs in the opener. And then they came in, they had a plan against Fulham. They executed. Look, Fulham gave them a gift at the end of the first half with a bad back pass. And then the second half, Tim Ream gets a second yellow card and he gives a penalty for the guy that got for an air shot. The guy literally swings and misses at the ball. And he somehow, it doesn't go look at that on VAR. If he would not have given a penalty there, they wouldn't have overturned it. Just go look at that. There's a little bit of contact, but come on, it's a swing and a miss. It's an air shot. And Boma scores from the spot. It's 2-0. It's game over. Look, and then that rubs salt in the wound. Mitrovic goes to Saudi Arabia. Look, he wanted to go. They were offering a big money amount. It was a club record fee that Fulham got for him, 58 million US dollars, 46 million euros. You've got to go out and reinvest that now before the end of the transfer window. You need a striker. Raul Jimenez is not it. Look, it's clear he doesn't have it anymore. And look, some of that is probably, it's hard to be the same after you have the kind of injury that he has in some respects. It's amazing that he's even still playing at the Premier League level, but he struggled to score goals since he came back from the injury. He struggled to score goals for Mexico at the international level. I look, they've been linked to Balogun at Arsenal. I know Chelsea's been apparently on him too. Monaco from League One. But you've got some money to spend. I would go after Balogun if I were Fulham. You need a forward. You need a number 9. He's a guy who is ready to take the next step in his career, and that's to maybe be at a club like Fulham and lead the line. So I would get in on the Balogun sweepstakes. Go ahead, Mike. Last thought on the other games.
Well, I want to stick with Fulham for a second. I actually just think while I agree they definitely need a goal scorer, I think there just may be better ways to invest that money. Why not go get a Che Adams from Southampton or a player like that where I don't
because I want
Fulham...
another American at Fulham. God darn it.
Okay, sign Brandon Vasquez then. If that's the American, what have you. I get you're kind of going for the punchline there, but Fulham.
No, I'd rather have Balogun.
But why one guy when you can use that money and get 4 or 5, and now instead of being on that relegation bubble, you can use some of this money to move into that Palace tier where you're comfortable.
Somebody's got to put the ball in the goal. You got to score goals.
Yeah.
Right? I think his heart is set right now.
Goals, it's hard. It's like if you can't score goals, you're not going to stay up.
Hey, if Fulham doesn't get 10 wins with those teams that we just talked about, that guy Silva, they should be in the championship. That guy Silva should be fired.
It's probably
the natural goal scorer on Brentford right now? They have a system that creates opportunities. They don't have one natural big-time goal scorer. Silva is that kind of level of coach where his system creates opportunities.
Yes, but they still had a target forward in Mitrovic for much of that. Like the guy had a record season in the championship. Like, and he's your traditional number 9 in the most traditional sense. Like,
Sure.
so
Sure.
look, and you're not going to get a like for like replacement for him because what he does, even when he's not scoring goals, the way he occupies defenders. But like, I don't want to go through this whole year without a center forward, like a reliable center forward on the roster. I mean, Carlos Vinicius, he's like a knockoff, like a Payless Mitrovic. I just don't think he's an everyday player. So that's why if I'm looking at what I'm going to do with that money, I just think you got to get a center forward.
Well, the biggest thing that I think you have to worry about, Kyle, is the fact that All In is at Wembley this Sunday, and Tony Khan's going to be a little preoccupied with selling out Wembley.
I've been to one of those shows in Atlantic City when they were in Atlantic City a couple of years ago, and I watched him do his shtick, and I went, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is the guy who runs the Fulham Football Club." But that brings us to a wrap on our Premier League Week 2 rundown. This is now the time when we go around the world. That was really bad, but
nope, it's
but
the imaging. Henceforth, we're playing that every week. Stu, pull the tape.
But we're gonna kick it to our Women's World Cup correspondent JJ Duke here. Spain 1-0 over England in the final. Olga Carmona scores in the 29th minute. Spain is able to make that goal stand up. Serena Wigman, the England manager, is now the first women's manager to lose a World Cup final with 2 different nations. But at the end of the day, it brings to close what I think was a pretty exciting tournament, and one that drew some record attendance there in Australia.
No, our friends down under put on a show that's going to be tough to top over the next couple of decades or so, because the commitment from the fans were there, stadiums were packed out. I mean, they even had to move matches to bigger venues because of the ticket demand. So job well done there. I actually have a friend that was on the Australia committee to help get the tournament there. So shout out to my friend Anno Dong. Well done. To the tournament, or to the final itself. Yeah, I mean, Spain did what they had to do on the day, and it proved that outside of that, you could say it was a dead rubber game against Japan, that it didn't mean anything, that they lost 4-0. The other 6 matches, they proved that they were the best team in that tournament. And now I think it was said that they're the only women's team in a Women's World Cup year to have held simultaneously the under-17, the under-20, and the senior World Cup titles all within 12 months of each other. And they took away the strengths of England. Lucy Bronze was basically rendered useless through the entirety of the match.
Yeah, it was her giveaway that led to the Spain goal. She kind of ran that into a cul-de-sac in the middle of the field, and they went right back into that area.
Yeah, Georgia Stanway and Kira Walsh, their class on their day, but they just couldn't get anything going. Unfortunately, on the other flank, you had Jess Carter, who's really a defensive-minded defender, not really an attacking-minded defender. Lauren James showed that she could change a game when she came on. I thought it was the right decision to bring her off the bench, but Spain were good enough on the day. And congratulations to them. Unfortunately, there were a few sour notes after. One, we send our condolences to Olga Carmona and her family with the passing of her father. That happened during the course of the tournament. And also the rather unsavory scenes that followed during the medal ceremony with Jenny Hermoso and the president of the Spanish Federation. If you haven't seen it, it's all there on social media. You guys know what to do at that point. But congratulations to Spain, England. Tough luck. I know they're feeling down on themselves, but at the same time, remember where this game came from, where 50 years ago, women were banned from playing the sport. And now they've won a European title, and they're finalists at a World Cup, and things are looking on the up and up.
I just want to make one more point on that. The 32-team format, I thought that was something that was really the right time for this. I know there was a little bit of debate about that. If it goes to 32 teams, will there be a lot of blowouts? Will it diminish the product? And I just think that it keeps, when you have 32 teams like that, first of all, they showed that there's enough quality in women's football that there should be 32, and that it keeps more countries interested. It shows that there's this prize, and there's this, there's people want to see it. when you look at some of the ratings from around the globe, you look at the number of people in the stadium that you can put on a tournament like this, and it can be something that makes money for your federation, and that you need to put the resources into the women's game. And the more countries that can see that and see that the carrot that's kind of being dangled at the end of that, I think that's so much better for the game globally. You saw like a team like Morocco, a team like Jamaica, both got into the knockouts. That never would have been, nobody would have thought that would have ever happened 4 years ago, 8 years ago. So I think the move to 32 teams was the right decision. I'm glad they did it. And I hope the game continues to grow in certain places because we've seen it get more competitive over the last few years, and I think it will continue to do that.
So
Agreed.
I have a point about something around the. Have anybody been watching La Liga at all?
A little.
Have you noticed anything about La Liga this year?
Something to do with Barcelona maybe being a little off.
No, every single game is in a different window. So I don't know if you. So I've been trying to watch some of these games, but they're playing 2 games on Friday. They're playing 3 games on all the different games. Now, Portugal's been doing this for a while. But, when you see the Premier League playing 4 or 5 games at the same time at 10 o'clock, I actually, La Liga is a pretty good league. So, trying to watch some of these games, and you have to try to figure out if you want to watch this game or watch Real Madrid. So Real Madrid's going to play next week, I think, on Friday. They're playing at 1:30 and 3:30. Obviously, over there, it's like 9:30 at night because they don't, they're up till 2 a.m. But I think it's pretty cool that they're doing that. And Portugal's done it for a while. The argument against it is sometimes people will say that people won't go to games if every game's on TV. However, in England, every game is blacked out at 3 o'clock anyway. So I just think it's pretty cool that they've been doing that. And once again, Real Madrid played really well. I think they're a player short. We all know who the player is. Doesn't look like it's going to happen until next year, but if they end up getting him somehow, if he has to go and Real Madrid pays for Mbappe, that team is going to be a monster team.
All right, let's go from Spain to Italy, where we had great news today on Monday. A Christian Pulisic banger for AC Milan in his debut against Bologna. Milan wins 2-0. Pulisic actually had the secondary assist. What is that? What we call it? We might call it a hockey assist here in America, to help set up the first goal.
Call it nothing.
I thought he was. I thought he was
The
really
pre-assist is now a thing.
Okay, the pre-assist. I thought he was really good in his 72 minutes, and the best thing about it was, man, he was smiling. He looked like he was having fun. He had not been having fun for a few years at Chelsea. I am going to enjoy watching AC Milan try and win the Scudetto with a bunch of Chelsea cast-offs. You have Pulisic, Loftus-Cheek, Tomori in the back, Giroud up front. But no, I thought AC Milan was a fun team to watch. Obviously they still have Rafael there. They did some other good business in the transfer window. Noah Okafor gives them another a striking option. Serie A looks like it might be fun this year with AC Milan, Inter, Napoli. Juventus got kicked out of Europe, but they looked really good in its opener with 3 goals in the first half to kill that off. But yeah, look, from a U.S. national team perspective, a lot of guys now in Serie A too. But Pulisic, man, he looked great. Happy to see that. The better he is, the better the national team is. Because look, I think he's an elite player when he's healthy. When his coach has trust in him, and when he's playing in this kind of form.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah, I think he's got to stay healthy. I mean, it doesn't, he shows these glimpses, but he's never healthy.
I'll still contend he was the best winger on Chelsea's roster. Some of it was his fault because your best ability is your availability. Your best ability is your available. Right.
You can't. He gets
he was hurt.
Yeah, you can't.
He was
if
hurt
you're not
too
available.
often.
Yeah, look, I mean,
If this dude was English, no one would know his name. He is a 26-year-old flame out
He's
prospect who has
24. First of all, he's
accomplished
24.
nothing.
First of all,
He's
he's
Harvey
24.
Barnes, maybe.
Stop.
Maybe.
We're gonna mute him. We're gonna mute
I
him. First
think-
of all, he's 24. He's 24. He's not 26. He won a Champions League with Chelsea. And by the way, he had a goal and assist.
Yeah,
against
that he
Real
had
Madrid
a
in that
massive
semifinal.
contribution in.
Yes, he did. He had a goal and assist against Real Madrid in the semifinal leg that helped them get to the final. He's won a Champions League final. So I don't want to. If he was healthy, and look, part of that is his fault because he couldn't stay healthy. So there were inconsistencies there. But Chelsea was a clown show, a circus of rotating managers and mismanagement at the ownership level who just buys the next shiniest toy, cycles through managers. Watch what he does this year. I
Then
put money
when
on it.
will
In
it be
Serie A, you're in
Pulisic
for
fault?
10 or more goals this year in Serie A this season.
He continuously failed. When is it his fault?
No, he did it. He did not continue to fail. He was not put in positions to succeed by his manager.
Oh, poor
He was
thing.
Chelsea's
more-
best winger.
This is more his level.
That's
I mean,
bollocks.
I think this level is a little bit. Look, I think the Premier League was a little bit too high intensity. Maybe he's always injured, but
Look,
we'll see.
Yeah, and
I
that
think
was the biggest. But he
bottom
had
of
glimpses
Serie A
in the Premier League. Like he had good runs of spell in the Premier League again. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying the consistency was an issue. But Mike, I'm going to mute. I'm going to mute you. I don't know. Mike, what is your around the world point?
Are you guys okay? By the way, like there was
we're
some
okay,
steam
we're okay.
coming, man.
No, Steve. No, Steve. It's
I'm
just
out
healthy-
here
healthy-
eating my popcorn and
healthy
enjoying
debate.
this tennis battle. This is great.
Health. No, just healthy debate.
Pent up aggression, Mike Samsel.
No. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh my God, talk about impossible transitions. But here we go. I thought United, while they had to be strong-armed into it, ultimately made the right decision to part with Mason Greenwood. There is going to be plenty of interest in him around the world. I can think of one particular nation that seems to be buying footballers and doesn't much care for women that he's probably bound for. But, I mean, I thought that it's a shame that United had to be pushed into it because United were going to bring him back. And they felt the water, and the water was too hot, and so they bailed. And so even if you have to be pushed ultimately into making the right decision, if you make the right decision, then you deserve some level of credit.
No, they did. They did their what you should have done.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
No, that's
the
it.
minimum amount of credit possible for doing what you should have done.
They're just the whole thing's it's a circus. The whole club is a circus right now, and it goes down. Look, they put the club up just for sale in November last year, and like you have two people or entities, whatever you want to call it, bidding like $6 billion to buy you, and they can't make just make a decision. Like if you're not going to sell, then don't sell. But then you're gonna get indicted for stock fraud because all this stuff was stock manipulation. The stock's going up and down. It's a whole thing. Just make a decision. There's no rudder right now. Like you have this whole thing. And look, if the club was sold 3 months ago, this thing would have been taken care of in a completely different manner. He either would have been back, and the new owners would have been like, "Listen, we don't care, he's back," or they would have been like, "Listen, he's gone. We're dealing with." Like it would have just been dealt with.
Yeah,
like it's this could have been dealt with months ago, and they keep saying when they kept putting it off, and it's like they made this thing like 3 weeks ago, saying, "Oh, we're going to say something." Well, like what? Like just. And then, they're going to bring him back, and they have all this stuff drafted, and they test the waters, and then everybody goes crazy, and then they get rid of him. That's weak. Like if your conviction is, look, we think he didn't get convicted and whatever, and he did this stuff, and we're going to bring him back, then that's whatever. Then just why would you wait to see whatever, or just get rid of him? But like they don't ever do the right thing. They never do the right thing. It's been like this for years. They never do the right thing.
Stu, you have anything around the world?
Yeah, I get it's hard to top that, but yeah,
I know. Well,
yeah. So Jude Bellingham in his first 2 games for Real Madrid, 3 goals, 1 assist. He's looked great, and for a midfield market where he goes for 103 million euros plus add-ons, he really doesn't look that expensive right now. After you see what Caicedo, Declan Rice, some of the other guys rumored to go for, so he's been amazing for Real Madrid so far. I'm sure he's going to have a very successful career there. And oh, by the way, his brother Job, 2 goals for Sunderland on Saturday as well. So a very good weekend for the Bellingham family.
yeah, and I just also want to take a second to talk about the League's Cup final here in the United States. Inter Miami beat Nashville in a shootout that finished, I think it finished 10-9 in the shootout. It went to the 11th round of the shootouts where the goalkeepers had to shoot, and Miami's goalkeeper scored and then stopped Nashville's goalkeeper on the next shot. It was actually a thrilling game with Messi in the final, a great atmosphere in Nashville. Nashville actually played really well in the game. Messi scored a tremendous goal to give them the lead. Nashville kind of scrapped the goal back. And then the Miami keeper made a couple saves, and then Miami hit the post with the final kick in regulation. It went straight to a shootout. It's another trophy for Messi. And then actually Miami will play in the U.S. Open Cup semifinal this week. That's the equivalent here. Like if you think about the FA Cup, what the FA Cup is in England, that's sort of the American version of it, the U.S. Open Cup. And Miami will have a semifinal in that this week before resuming MLS play. And the funny thing about MLS play is Miami is in dead last in MLS, winless in its last 11 games. And the more impressive feat will be if Messi takes Miami on a run and they make the playoffs, because they've got to jump over about 7 or 8 teams just to get into the playoffs. Like I said, dead last in MLS. If he's able to pull that off, that would be quite a feat as well to add to what he's already done here since coming to the States.
Me, JJ, Sean, and Stu, the host of Box to Box Football. Kyle Franko, the host of Box to Box Soccer.
And
Carrying the
playoffs.
American Wooder.
Playoffs. If any of you don't know, Google Jim Mora Colts playoffs and listen to that clip.
Inter Miami's winning the cup. Inter Miami's winning the playoffs. No one is beating that team with that team right now. They have half the Barcelona Champions League team in the lineup. No one is beating that team in the playoffs.
Speaking of playoffs, Kyle.
Yes, Champions League playoffs. We almost forgot, but we've got Champions League playoff round, which is going to determine the last 6 spots going into the group stage. Let me just read you off what those pairings are. Antwerp will play AEK Athens. These games are, by the way, these first 3 games are on Tuesday. The second 3 games are on Wednesday, and then they'll flip-flop next week for the second leg. But Antwerp will play AEK Athens. It'll be Rangers against PSV. Copenhagen of Denmark will play, let's see if I get this right, Rakow Sedekova from Poland. It'll be Molde from Norway against Galatasaray. Braga from Portugal against Panathinaikos of Greece. Maccabi Haifa of Israel against the Young Boys from Switzerland. Any of those stand out to you guys?
Who is the Saudi Arabian champion playing?
I don't think they're in the UEFA Champions
League.
Not in it.
They're not yet. Not yet. Next year.
Until they buy their way in.
Next year.
Correct.
The Rangers.
Do they forget, by the way, that there is an AFC Champions League that they're already in?
The argument that people make is the Israeli teams, the teams from Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, which part of those is in Europe, so they make that case. But come on. You can't just let teams into this stuff. They're letting Inter Miami into the Copa Libertadores.
Well, they invited them. They invited them. I know they invited them. It doesn't mean that's going to happen, but they basically they just want Messi to come to South America so they can sell tickets.
Yeah, look, but these games Haifa Young Boys, I think, is going to be pretty interesting. That Haifa team is pretty good. Rangers, PSV Eindhoven. I mean, that's probably the best
I think
tie.
that's the tie of the round.
Yeah.
Athens
PSV
just
turning
had
into the I was going to say PSV turning into the American outpost in Europe. Ernie Stort is there as their technical director. They brought in Ricardo Pepi. They brought in Malik Tillman from Rangers. Actually, Malik Tillman from Rangers via Bayern Munich. And then they just brought in Serginho Dest on loan from Barcelona.
Yeah, and AEK Athens just had to play. I mean, they just played on Saturday. They had to go through, and they got through, and after the stabbings and stuff. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I actually watched Rangers play this weekend because what I actually like about the Scottish setup is they have their League Cup is kind of like their preseason tournament to start, and then they play the knockout rounds as you go along. So they played Greenock Morton this weekend, and it was, for me, a very new Rangers side because Michael Beale came in at the middle of last season, and a lot of players that were in that run to the Europa League final in that really what was a poor showing in the Champions League, they're all pretty much gone, and it's going to be kind of a new look team, a new style. They're trying to emulate some of the things that Celtic did. They're not obviously going to say that under Ange, but they're trying to impose their will a little bit. So I'll be fascinated to see how this team, similar short turnaround to play on this Tuesday night against Eindhoven, who, yeah, a lot of players also coming in. Dest trained today, which is interesting. So I think he might be eligible to play tomorrow. Something just to keep an eye on. Yeah, that's, I think, the tie of the round for me. And could one of those teams possibly make a run out of the group stage of the Champions League? We'll see. But yeah, that's definitely the one to watch.
Anything else? Going once, going twice. And that brings us to a close for Box to Box Football.
Are we still friends, Kyle?
We are still friends. We are still friends.
Yay.
We just had a little bit of a little bit of banner here. Just it's all good. It's all in good fun. There's never any hard feelings on the Box to Box podcast. Just
me and you were never worried, but JJ looked like mom and
I was
dad
eating
were back
popcorn,
at the dinner
man.
table.
I was eating some
Just
popcorn, y'all. That was fun to watch.
If you want more of that, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Remember to leave a 5-star review. You can comment. It helps drive the algorithm. If you want to ring the bell, I don't know. Can you ring the bell? If you can, make sure you do it. And tell your friends about us. We're on Box to Box Football on Twixter. Twixter is what I'm calling it. And we're Box to Box Football Pod on Insta. And we're back on Friday morning with a match day 2 preview or 3 preview. We just did match day 2. Come on, Kyle. A match day 3 preview. So
Preview.
goodbye, and we'll see you next time.